All right, welcome back. We got an excellent guest, friend of the show. They're all friends of the show. I say it every time. They're all friends of the show. We call each other friends here. He's one of the brightest stars on Broadway. His band, the 8-Bit Big Band, has a virtual live performance coming up at Sony Hall December 10th, 8 p.m. No matter what time zone you're in, it's at 8 p.m.
Yep.
Charlie Rosen, what you doing? How's it going?
Pretty good. You know, getting by.
So you told us that you made a move to a new place on the pre-show here, and we were just talking about how, you know, you're painting your doors and your friends' walls. What's been going on since COVID? I mean, it feels like, again, in pre-show we said it feels like 3 years. We just talked earlier this year. How's it been going through all this?
I mean, it's so fun. We talked in January, right?
Yeah.
So like, it's crazy to think about. I mean, my life was sort of full speed ahead when we talked. Like when we talked, I was about to like conduct at Carnegie Hall for the first time, and like all this crazy stuff was happening. I was rehearsing this orchestra, and the 8-Bit Big Band was about to do its Sony Hall performance 2 days before Carnegie Hall, and like things were just nonstop. And then we played in Boston at the Berkeley Performance Center for 2 shows on March 1st with Carlos with Insane in the Rain's big band opening for us, and it was just like a nonstop flurry of like large orchestras all at once. And it's actually crazy to think that March 1st we were in a room with 4,000 audience members and 2 big bands, and it was like 2 weeks later the world was going to completely stop. I'm just honestly thankful that I personally didn't get COVID. I mean, a number of members of the 8-Bit Big Band, in fact, did get COVID, and one was in very serious condition on a ventilator in a coma for a month. So luckily we're doing better now, but you know, it was dark for a while there.
Yeah, it's crazy how many stories you hear like that, and then there's still people that won't wear a mask or just don't believe it. It's like, what do you think? People are making this up?
I know.
Millions of people are making this up. It makes no sense.
And this is the first time I've talked about this, but like since I announced that virtual concert, which is happening on December 10th, which I'll get into in a sec, there have been people commenting on those posts being like, why don't you have an audience? Like, why are you being so careful? You know, it's like a fake disease, or like it doesn't kill 99.9% of people. And I'm like, that maybe that's true. I don't totally know, but it did almost kill a member of the 8-Bit Big Band and infected a handful, at least 3 or 4 others. So I don't know what to tell you.
It's like, first of all, yeah, I've personally been to 2 of your shows, and they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. And I'm not just saying that. I wouldn't have gone to 2 of them. You know, I don't see many people twice. Yeah. But like, even if it killed 0.0001% of people, isn't that too many?
That's still too many.
It's a lot of people.
Still people dying. So I don't get that. So that on that note, this live stream concert, I started planning with a producer like, you know, maybe 2 months ago, and things in New York were looking really good at that point. We felt safe. Even given that, we have required that we're not exceeding the current limit of 50 people in a space. Everybody's going to wear a mask unless they're playing a wind instrument, and everybody's required to get a COVID rapid test no more than 48 hours before the show. They rented out the whole 600-seat theater, so the entire orchestra is spread out horizontally. Nobody's in front of each other. Everyone's got their own mic. You know, we're doing everything we can. We're blowing air on breaks, taking frequent breaks and clearing the room. We're doing everything we can to be safe. Even still, the numbers in New York are going up, and so, you know, we're keeping an eye on it day to day, but we are taking as many precautions as we possibly can.
And it's crazy how more people are upset that they can't go than that are praising you for doing all that. And it's,
I know, right?
It could be a whole thing. We won't go too much into that, because it's definitely obviously on everyone's radar there. But the show that's going on, you said, so you rented out the whole thing and you're spreading everybody out, which is going to be so cool, and everybody has their own mic. So do you have an idea how that's going to sound already, or is this kind of going in, you don't really know how it's going to sound because that's not really how it's done there?
Yeah, I mean, I had some concerns going in about the sound for sure, but I did a site visit and with some of the people on tech there, and they have been doing live streams at Sony Hall already, like, you know, with bands. So with people 5 or 6 people, they'll do it on stage, and because it's Sony sponsored, they're fully decked out with like all the equipment you could possibly want. 6 4K cameras that are, some are mounted, some are not. All the mics you could need. You know, this brand new like HD sound system with this thing called Reality Audio that they can do like 360 audio and headphones and all sorts of crazy stuff. So tech-wise, they're set up for it. So essentially what it's going to be like it's just going to be like a live recording session, basically. You know, everyone's going to have, like, we would go into the studio and everyone would have a mic, and the drums would be behind a shield, you know, like we would just do a live recording session, which is what we do anyway, to make our album. So it's essentially just that, but there will be a live stream of it, and I will be talking to a virtual audience while doing that. So I have faith that these engineers and the tech people there, they're just basically treating it like a recording session, you know?
Yeah, and he's talking about the show at Sony Hall, December 10th. That's fully virtual. Where can people go if they want tickets? Are $20, by the way. If they want to get a ticket, where can they go?
They can go to our website, the8bitbigband.com, and more specifically, the8bitbigband.com/tickets, or you can go to our Instagram bio and click a link right there, and it'll pull you right up to the ticket site. Or you could go to the Sony Hall website, and I'm sure they have a link to it on there. I haven't checked personally, but I can't imagine they don't.
So there's so many ways to do it. There's no way, if you can't find it, you might need to turn your computer on, because you can find it just about everywhere.
And all the tickets are $20. Just everyone comes in $20, and you get a ticket to the show.
Perfect. So other than 8-Bit Big Band stuff, what else have you been doing? I mean, you were doing so much in January. I believe you were doing something with Billy Crystal, and you're doing the 8-Bit Big Band,
right? And
you were doing all this stuff. So what happened once COVID hit? What happened with you?
Well, we did end up recording that film score for the Billy Crystal movie. It got pushed and pushed until we ended up doing it sort of half remote, half in person. I recorded a lot of instruments from home, and then we went into a small studio and did like one person at a time and recorded some strings and some horns, with Billy Crystal on Zoom. So, and so we got that done. But essentially, my life has completely pivoted towards home producing, home recording. There've been a ton of sort of like virtual events that have been happening in the theater world and outside of it, benefits and galas and live stream concerts that have all needed like tracks for these singers to sing along to. So I've been making a living producing backing tracks for like high profile virtual events. Like there was a Broadway for Biden event, and like all these theater companies have their virtual galas, and just various things. I just produced a track for Jennifer Hudson to sing for a virtual event, and all sorts of stuff. And then just like a lot of theater artists are using this time to like work on their shows. And so I've been doing a lot of demos for these shows from home, and just fully pivoted to recording stuff from home. We finished our third album remotely. So the not only is the show on December 10th for the 8-Bit Big Band, but the 8-Bit Big Band's third album, which is called Backwards Compatible, is coming out on January 8th. So we completed that in quarantine. All the horn players recorded from home and submitted them to me, and then we recorded rhythm section in the studio, drums, piano, and bass. So that's finished. We finished that up, and that's honestly, I'm more excited about that than anything. It sounds so good.
Yeah, I bet.
So
what are some of the challenges with doing it all at home and on Zoom and stuff like that, though? I mean, being obviously in a studio with everybody there, and you can say, hey, we need more of this, hey, we need more of that. You can have the tech guy right in your ear. Right. With everybody being all over the place, what are some of the biggest challenges?
The biggest challenges of like recording an orchestra like that is that the horn and string players can't like listen to each other for decisions about how to phrase certain notes and lines and things like that. And so there's definitely some more back and forth that you have to do, to get it to sound as clean as it would in a studio. But we ended up with a pretty good product despite all of that. I mean, the way we got around it is the last 3 tracks that we recorded for the album, basically like there was only one trumpet player, and that trumpet player played all 4 parts. And so it's really tight and clean sounding, because otherwise if they weren't playing together, they wouldn't phrase together. So it's definitely been sort of a compromise, but it ended up sounding really great. And the key to that was recording live piano, drums, and bass still, so that as a rhythm section, as sort of the foundation of the band, we could still interact with the people playing,
That's awesome. So
yeah.
Outside of like the challenges of COVID, what's the hardest part of composing all of this? So like when you guys are all in the same place, what's the most difficult part about composing and putting these pieces together with all those players, even when you're in the same room?
Right. It's funny because once we get into the studio to do it, that's actually the easiest part, because everybody is so good that it's like, once we're there, it just sort of happens. We just are like, boom, let's do that song. Great. Sounds great. Boom. Next song. Great. Boom. Next song. Great. And, so we do about like a song every 45 minutes we do a song, and that's like a leisurely, like, okay, cool, yeah, do a couple takes each, you know. We're not like under a pressure cooker. But the reason that that can happen is because I do a ton of prep work for those recording sessions, and that's the thing that is the most time consuming. Of course, like actually arranging the songs takes time, you know, and artistic inspiration.
Absolutely.
But the thing is, I make absolutely sure that all of the sheet music looks perfect. You know, it's all printed and taped well. I hire the whole band, book the studio, book the videographers. Just try and like, put my producer hat on and think of every possible thing that could go wrong and mitigate that ahead of time. So like any time spent in the studio talking about like, oh wait, hold on, what measures am I supposed to play? Or like, oh wait, what were you thinking when you wrote this? Like that's wasted time. And so it's stuff I can do ahead of time with like through prep work. And I make a very good sounding demo. I send the demo out to people so they can take a listen ahead of time. So that's really the biggest hurdle, is all this sort of like logistical stuff that goes into booking a large orchestra session like this and having it run efficiently.
How do you get some of the inspiration for some of the stuff you do? Because for anybody that doesn't know, that's been living under a rock or whatever, you do a big band version of video game songs, but you put your own twist on it. Like you had the Wii song with Austin Powers. Mm-hmm. The Yoshi one was more like a Louisiana jazz, Bourbon Street type feel. So how do you get the inspiration to put these onto the songs? Or Tetris is another big one.
Totally. Right.
Yeah. So how do you get these inspiration for that?
There's sort of two routes that this stuff can go. And the first route is like the more sort of straight path. And that is, you know, we take these old songs from video games in which they were very limited by the technology with which to represent their musical ideas. And as a fellow musician, I can sort of listen to that and hear through the limitations, although the limitations were great because through limitation, they were able to do some really creative things. But say like, okay, I listened to that athletic theme from Yoshi's Island, or I listened to the Tetris theme, I hear like, oh, you know, I hear the Yoshi's Island thing. You're going in this sort of like traditional jazz kind of Dixieland direction already. And so I'm just going to take that. And now that I have the full gamut of orchestral resources at my disposal, and we're removing it from its original context and need to loop, I'm going to run fully in that direction as a producer and an arranger towards all of the musical choices that are in the orbit of traditional, you know, New Orleans jazz. So like, what is that? Like, what are my now available textures to me with this ensemble in this idiom? And I just put them all in there, right? And so Tetris, same thing. That Tetris theme A is a Russian folk song that was repurposed. And so what are other things in the orbit of that? Other Russian folk songs, other Eastern European styles, you know, like horas or like mazurkas and other, you know, and I put some Chopin in there, which isn't Eastern European, but is like sort of classical, you know, putting that in there. So just like running in that direction with those things. But then there's another route for like inspiration, which is totally taking it from its original context, just taking the building blocks of the song, like its melody, and doing a complete stylistic change to it. And that's like Still Alive from Portal in the style of Frank Sinatra. But it still has like a thread. The inspiration of those are not random. Like I think for that to work, for you to recontextualize a whole song in a completely different genre, there still has to be some like dramaturgical seed to that. So the seed of that is like, okay, well, what if, you know, this were you know, something that happened in the 40s or 50s and Frank Sinatra somehow was able to play Portal, you know, and say like, oh, that's a song I want to cover, like he would do with the Broadway shows of the time. Be like, oh, I loved Guys and Dolls, I want to sing some Guys and Dolls. Like, oh, I loved Portal, I want to sing some Portal, so I'm going to give it to my arranger and I'm going to sing it, you know, that kind of thing. And it also kind of works because of the tone of the lyric of Still Alive. And also we did Want You Gone on the new album in a similar style. Is there's such like playful, sort of sarcastic like lyrics, which works really well for this sort of like carefree Frank Sinatra, I'm easygoing, you know, like I'm still alive, baby. Like they're really like, it works. The lyric works dramaturgically in this style as well.
Yeah, so you have one song. What are some other songs that are going to be on this new album? And the new album, again, is coming out in January for anybody that's looking for it.
January 8th.
January 8th. So what are some of the new songs that we can expect to see?
I'll tell you, and I actually have not said it anywhere else before this, so this is the first time you're here.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So it's going to be a really, really, really great album. I really stacked this album with some insane special guests.
Okay.
And the album starts with the Chrono Trigger theme featuring an incredible pianist named Stephen Feifke, who's like a young jazz guy who's got a big band, great arranger. And then it goes Gourmet Race from Kirby Superstar, Hydro City Zone from Sonic 3, featuring Grace Kelly playing some sax. And then Want You Gone from Portal 2 with Benny Benack singing and playing trumpet again. Meta Knight's Revenge, also from Kirby Superstar, featuring a keyboard player called Button Masher, who's this incredible like contemporary jazz fusion keyboard player that he takes sound fonts from games and puts them on his MIDI organ and then like rearranges them in incredible ways. So I worked with him on this arrangement, the Super Mario Land Underground theme, featuring Leo P from Too Many Zoos on sax. That's this sort of like metal / Led Zeppelin / like Middle Eastern classical fusion ensemble with this just incredible Barry player that is pushing the envelope of Barry sax, truly. And then we have Dire Dire Docks featuring myself on bass, actually. This is one I wrote, special one to me. Birdman from Pilot Wing 64 featuring Zach Zinger on the Iwi, which is the electronic wind instrument. It's sort of like a synthesized saxophone.
Okay.
Lost in Thoughts All Alone from Fire Emblem Fates, featuring a vocal jazz quintet called Accent that met on YouTube, and they're just like this incredible tight harmony jazz group. Sorry, a Song from Ocarina of Time featuring Adam Neely on bass, actually a feature I wrote for Adam. Snake Eater from Metal Gear Solid, featuring an insane vocalist called named Tiffany Mann, who I met working on Be More Chill, the Broadway show, just like an incredible vocalist. Jump Up Superstar from Odyssey with Grace Kelly singing, and then concluding with the Super Mario World end theme from Super Mario World, which is just like a good old swing tune.
So some of these I've heard before because you played them in some of your live shows, but I don't think all of them have been played yet, right?
No, yeah. We're going to be playing some of them for the first time on December 10th, and some of them people won't hear until the album comes out.
Some of those I'm just like, it made me so excited to hear some of those. The Gourmet Race, I think we actually talked about the last time we talked when we were talking about songs. Oh, that's so great. So before we keep going on that, I want to go back a little bit. You did 2 Broadway shows before you even turned 20, and then recently you worked on Moulin Rouge, which you were nominated for a Tony for. So that's congratulations for that, first of all.
Thank you.
Because getting that nomination took long enough, and then you finally get it, and now you got to wait to even hear who's going to win that one.
I know, and what's so funny about that is the Tonys are usually in June, and so obviously they were canceled, and then they were like, we're going to do a virtual Tonys, and they announced these nominees in October. They were like, we're going to do a virtual event in December. And it's now, we haven't heard a single word since the nominations came out. And it's like, well, it's almost December. So I don't think that's going to happen. So we're just sort of like, I don't know. Well, maybe one day maybe the Tonys will happen. Who knows? We don't know. We have no idea.
And since they kind of put it on us with the nominations, how did you even hear about it? Like, were you sitting down and like waiting for it, or did someone just be like, hey, did you know you got nominated for Tony?
Yeah, kind of that. I was like on a little sort of like mini vacation with my girlfriend and 2 friends that I've been quarantined with a lot. We like got an Airbnb in upstate New York, and we brought the dog, and we were on the way home from that, like driving in the car back to New York City, 4-hour car ride. And then somebody was just on their phone. They were like, hey, you got nominated for a Tony. Oh my shit.
Yeah, like,
I guess I should call my parents.
And after this, before the 8-Bit Big Band, you did the Brooklyn Big Band. So what made you start wanting to do big band? You did both at the same time.
The Broadway Big Band.
Okay. The Broadway Big Band.
Yeah.
And what made you decide to even get into big band, swing band type stuff?
Well, I guess my dad is a jazz musician, like an early jazz musician, and 20s, 30s stuff, and also plays some bluegrass. But, I've always sort of had that stuff around, and my mom is a classical musician, so I grew up with like orchestral and large ensemble jazz music around in the house. But it wasn't until high school when I started playing in big bands in high school that I sort of was like, oh, this is an amazing sound. And then it took a few more years. I went to Berkeley, and I was doing some Broadway shows, and I just always loved big band writing. I seen big bands growing up, contemporary big bands in LA, and I've always just loved large orchestras of any kind. And so I found that big bands are more progressive. You know what I mean? So like big band is an interesting thing because on one hand people say like, oh, I love big band music, like, but they're talking about it like a genre, like, oh, swing music, you know, like Benny Goodman or whatever. But big band is also now just become like a term for a certain set of instruments. And it's, you know, big band is just a vehicle of which we can put any genre of music in now and have this big band set of instruments that plays like rock or funk or swing or jazz or metal or, you know, whatever, like literally whatever. And so the vehicle of big band has been a good way. It has been like how I feel like I personally want to write. Like I want the rhythm section to be any kind of band and just have a ton of horns on top of it. So when I was in college, I had a girlfriend at the time who was like an actress, and we were like, we should make like a big band EP and you'll sing some stuff from Broadway shows and I'll arrange them for you. And we made like a 6-song EP. And then that sort of gave me the idea to be like, oh, I should start doing this in New York and use my Broadway connections to get singers to play in the band. So I did that for about 6 or 7 years, still doing it. I just haven't done it for a while. Actually working on that album as well. After like 10 years of having this, we've got tons of songs. And that sort of served as like a lab for me to be like, well, once every 2 months, I have this big band show of all songs from Broadway shows, and I can really like do whatever I want with them and try stuff and see what happens. And so that was an incredible way to get my name out there as an arranger, as someone who has those kinds of arranging skills, but also as a lab for myself to test out my arranging and see what works and figure out what my sound was. And all that being said, I've always been a gamer and I've always loved game music. So it kind of just was a transition into like the 8-bit big band. And the short version of that origin story is I was in Japan on a little vacation, and I was in an Airbnb that there was a music store like on the same street of, and it was this music store that had been open for 300 years in Kyoto, which is really cool. And so when I go to like foreign countries, I like to buy, you know, instruments that are from that culture. So I bought a shamisen from there. And Zach Singer, the guy I said plays on Birdman on the new album, he is also a shakuhachi player, which is the traditional Japanese woodwind. And he's like gotten a grant to go study there in Japan and like really serious about this and has tons of Japanese musician friends. And so he hooked me up with a guy in Tokyo, and he was like, you should go take a lesson from this guy. He's so cool. And I went there and he was great. We had such a good time, and he plays koto and shamisen, and he gave me some lessons, and we were talking about music and all this stuff. And then when we were done, I saw that he had a soundtrack to Ganbare Goemon, which is a big game series in Japan, but there was only a couple English releases. One of them was called Mystical Ninja Starring Goemon for the N64. Super, super niche game. It came out the same time as Zelda 64, so it got no attention. But I love this game. It's like one of my favorite games. And so I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you have Ganbare Goemon soundtrack. That's a great game. I love that game. And he was like, oh, you like video games? I'm like, yeah. So he was like, I want to give you a gift. And he gave me his album, which is all traditional Japanese ensemble playing video game music. And it's called Famikoto. In Japan, the Nintendo is called the Famicom, and he plays koto, so it's called Famikoto. Yeah. And I was listening to it on the plane. I was like, that's so cool. That's such a great, he did such a good job with these arrangements. And that's when the idea sparked to be like, you know, I love orchestral arranging, and I love big band and pops writing and contemporary ensemble writing, and I love video game music, and I should just do that like I did with the Broadway big band. And I sort of started looking around, and, you know, there's other big bands that play video game music, but I didn't see a sort of like, we are a video game only big band. This is our branding. This is what we do. This is the only thing we play. And there's a ton of video game music orchestras, but they're all most of them are like very serious classical orchestras or like metal orchestras with huge choirs and like, you know, shredding it. Like it's all like very heavy. You know what I mean? And so there wasn't like, I was like, what if the New York Pops or like the Boston Pops did like a night of video game music with like young improvisers and vocalists, you know, and it was like light and fun, and it wasn't like epic orchestral. It was like the lighter side of orchestra, you know, which is not a new thing at all. I just didn't really see anybody doing it in the game music space. So I sort of like wanted to fill that void.
Yeah, I mean, this, and I think the London Orchestra did that one time where they did a bunch of video game music, and it just sounds so great. Like it's so easy on the ears and like so enjoyable and stuff.
Yeah.
And you already mentioned that you really enjoyed that one game. What are the 3 biggest video games that like hold a spot in your heart? What kind of got you started and really attached to that video game music?
It was I grew up mostly a Nintendo guy, so I have a lean towards that, and I grew up with Nintendo 64 specifically, so I have an even bigger lean towards that. But I mean, the two big soundtracks are both by Koji Kondo, the first two I think of, and so I don't know if that counts as one because it's the same composer, but it would be Ocarina of Time. Yeah, it'd be Ocarina of Time, which I often say that one day I'm going to make a video of just like a dissertation on how each track of that OST has like a nugget of music theory that you can pull out of it. And then the other is Super Mario 64 because like that was the one for me. And then the third soundtrack, it's kind of a tie between Final Fantasy X and Super Mario Galaxy. Because Galaxy was like, listen to this fucking orchestra.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
That
soundtrack's
amazing.
And Final Fantasy X was like, oh, this is a film score, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Final Fantasy stuff was showing me that like, oh, this is film music, you know, it deserves the same sort of treatment as we treat film scores, you know, it can function really dramatically, and it's not just about finding little themes that will loop. It's about like, how does this music serve the story the same way that film scores serve their films and Broadway shows have their scores and you know, so on. It's like, this is a very artful piece of dramatic underscoring.
What would you say some of the biggest differences between composing for the 8-bit big band and something like Broadway are?
There's really not. I like talking about this because there are not really a ton of differences. There's a few sort of like mechanical differences, of course, and functional differences in the way that music is implemented. One is on stage and is performed live every night, and you know, and one is coded and implemented and needing to function and change in real time. So I'll get to that in a sec, but when you're talking about like purely the artistic way that you write a score that supports a piece of media, that's sort of something that transcends the actual medium that you're doing. You know, you're responding to visual on screen. It's making you feel a certain way and suggests a certain thing and say, okay, I see what this needs. It needs these instruments and these kinds of melodies and this feeling. So the actual art of composing for the two things is not dissimilar. Really, but then in the mechanical differences of it, Broadway shows have tons of lyrics, obviously, and so when you're working with a song versus a piece of underscoring, it's a slightly different thing. So there's that, and then of course in video games, the difference being that like in a Broadway show or a piece of traditional media, the amount of time that music is going to take is completely locked in. That's not going to change. And in video games, the gamer, the actual player, is functioning as the film editor or, you know, the arranger of the game, so, you know, so to speak, where the music has to react to their actions in real time. And so you have the composing challenge there is you have to think more structurally, like, what can I do that will allow the player to essentially orchestrate this music with their actions? And so that's like a different way. But there have been a lot of like, contemporary classical composing techniques called like aleatoric techniques or chance music, where composers in the early part of the 20th century were experimenting with using a different set of input like parameters that wasn't musical to create composition. And so, you know, there were things where it's like you take 12 notes and you rip them up and you throw them on the floor, and then whatever order you pick them up in, that's your melody, and you have to work with that. Like that was a composing technique, you know, or things like that, or things where it's like this composition happens in real time based on like, okay, this instrument's going to loop, and then I'm going to conduct in a different time signature over here, and then on the cue of the composer, like you're going to bring in this. So like interactive music had its seeds in like contemporary classical already, and so there's just like, you know, there's a lot of overlap in all these various kinds of composing.
And so what would you say is the coolest experience you've had in your career so far? Because you've done a lot across the board. What would you say is the hands down like wow moment for you? What's been the coolest thing that's happened?
There've been a couple. I mean, I got to be the music director of a late night show on NBC for like 9 episodes, which was really cool, and compose a bunch of music for that. And like, you know, shooting a TV show was very cool, and having a live audience and being this house band was really awesome. Conducting at Carnegie Hall is pretty, you know, legendary.
Major.
I mean, yeah. Pretty legendary. The first time I heard my music performed in a Broadway theater was pretty memorable. I'm trying to think, you know, the first time I like heard the Boston Pops play an arrangement of mine, it was pretty cool. There's lots of little things that come to mind, you know.
I want to talk. We have a couple more minutes here. I want to talk about two projects that you had during quarantine. One were the KK sessions. Did that come to mind because of how big Animal Crossing became during COVID? Because it was, I mean, it's still pretty big, but when COVID first hit, that was, I mean, I had it. I'm sure anyone that had a Switch owned it. So did that
exactly.
Where that came from?
Yeah, it's totally where it came from. I mean, like we were playing it. Me and my girlfriend were playing it every single day. And, you know, so. And I had played Animal Crossings in the past, and so I was aware of like KK Slider, and I always thought it was really cool. Like I remember I think I was 10 when the first one came out. I was like, oh, I got to get all the KK songs. I think that's so awesome. That's always been something that has been a really cool aspect of that game to me. And so it was like hearing those songs over and over, and like hearing the KK songs and being like, oh, these songs are just so good, and I think that we can't go back to the studio, and so I should find a way to like continue to record some stuff and get some stuff out there, and this seems like the perfect little package.
Was that with the band, or did you do, I know you played, you know, 270,000 instruments, so is that something like you did yourself, or did you get the band together to do that?
Yeah, it's sort of like what we've been doing now. It was remote. You know, I played guitar and bass, and then I got the drummer to record from home, and like got the horn players to record from home. It was the band. Everyone was just recording from home.
And the other one I want to talk about is you did Lifelight from Super Smash Brothers, and you had 664 musicians enter into this. They submitted their part of it, and then you put it together. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that is not only such a cool thing, but just had to have been, first of all, cool, hard experience, whatever it is. But can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know, I had the idea because I saw that a lot of people were sort of doing similar things where it was like, let's do a virtual choir, since we can't, you know, this was a very popular thing to do at the beginning of quarantine. And I was like, oh, that's such a cool way to like stay together in like such a hard time. And I was like, I want to give back to like all these fans, you know, I want to connect with all these fans who have been like listening so faithfully. And like, I know a lot of my fans are like music students who are at schools and can no longer play their instruments with people, which is so sad. And so I just was like, I should do this and pick a piece of video game music that everyone really loves and make it a community project, you know. And I was sort of expecting maybe like 80 or 90 people to submit, and I was pretty overwhelmed when I started seeing my Google Doc filling up with like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names. It was a very cool thing, you know. And what's really cool about it is the experience of doing it for people is the exact same experience that you would have as a professional. So I like to think it was a cool way for people to like, you know, feel like this is what it is to be a professional musician nowadays. And not a lot of people get an opportunity to like be presented to record a thing like that. And a lot of people, you know, it was really fun. Seemed really fun for everybody. Everyone reacted really positively. And, you know, it was my pleasure to foot the bill to give fans of the 8-Bit Big Band the opportunity to play with us, you know?
It's like being a fan of a thing, and then the composer comes out and says, hey, you want to be a part of the band?
Yeah,
I'm sure people are like, yes. Yeah, of course I want to be a part of the band. I'll do whatever I have to do it. So if people are looking for the 8-Bit Big Band, where can they find it?
We're super active on social media, you know, Instagram, 8-Bit Big Band, Twitter, 8-Bit Big Band. Our YouTube channel is like obviously our flagship. It has all of our videos, in-studio videos, the 8-Bit Big Band on YouTube. I have a ton more videos I'm going to be posting in the next few months leading up to the third album. Also, all of our albums are available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, you know, Bandcamp, whatever your listening streaming service of choice is. We're up there, I think. So yeah, anywhere, you know, happy to connect with anybody or answer any questions about the band if people want to DM us on Instagram. Instagram's the thing I check the most. We're on Facebook too, but I'm less active on there.
I think that's how it's gone. You know, It's gone from, Facebook was big a couple of years ago. Now it's very big on Instagram. A lot of people kind of went away from that, but they bought that, so I don't think they care anyway.
They don't give a shit. Yeah. And also, a lot of people are. People have been like, "Hey, is the 8-Bit Big Band gonna get a TikTok?" But I just don't. I don't know if I'm cool enough. I don't know. The thought of managing, yet another social media to me is like.
Yeah, it's funny because we think the same thing. Like I say all the time, should we get a TikTok? And we got two youngins here that know what's going on. A couple of us have no idea what's going on because we've never used it. We're not on it. We were just like, I don't know how it works. I don't know how it goes. But
what would I do? You know, it's so funny actually. When Vine was a thing, I low-key was like on track to become a Vine thing. So like I posted this one video that got like really viral, and all of a sudden I had like 50,000 Vine followers. Like after one video of me playing a bunch of instruments like in a row that was looping. So I started putting out all these looping videos and was like, oh, Vine is so cool. Not even 3 weeks later, Vine shut down.
Yeah, it's crazy. Some people went on and did great with like after Vine.
I missed
but then some people just, yeah, exactly. They just missed it. They just didn't move on to something else. And then some people, the worst ones were the ones that moved on to Facebook, which is also now dead.
Yeah,
They've been the two dead ones now.
Right.
Backwards Compatible comes out January 8th. You can also catch them at on a virtual show, which takes place at Sony Hall December 10th. And now it's 8 p.m. everywhere. So is it going to be 8 p.m. live in each time zone, or are you going to replay the first one that you do?
We're going to replay. So if you can buy whatever time zone you want. So if you're in Japan and you're like, no, I want to really see them do it live, you can buy a ticket for New York at 8 p.m. and we will be performing live. But once that happens, it will automatically be rebroadcast at 4 other time slots, which correspond to 8 p.m. in the various locations. So it's going to play at 11 p.m. New York time, so it's 8 p.m. in LA, and then at like 5 in the morning New York time, so it's 8 p.m. in Japan. And you can buy a ticket for any of those 8 p.m. time slots, or buy a ticket for the 8 p.m. New York time slot, and really, we will be doing it absolutely live in that moment.
I do recommend that. Like I said, I've seen you guys a bunch of times. Excellent stuff. Definitely go check that out. That's December 10th. They're going to be doing live at Sony Hall. You can get tickets on their Instagram. They have a link, their website. Hopefully Sony Hall is on page 2, and they put it on their website. So anywhere you want to go, look up the 8-Bit Big Band and get on that. Thank you for joining us. It's always great talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.
All right, we'll be right back.